Ladies and gents, welcome back to another Enginears podcast with SumUp today. We're joined by two engineering leaders in the business, Jan and Adrian, who are going to be talking to us about some really interesting subjects, especially around balancing autonomy with centralization. But we've got some quite cool subsections that both Adrian and Jan are going to be running us through individually. And we're going to talk about a growing organization and some of the people change that actually comes with that. I can't wait for this one. So, Adrian, Jan, say hello. Take turns to introduce yourself. Adrian, I'll come to you first.
Perfect.
Say hello and tell us a little bit about you.
Hello, everyone. Very excited to be talking a little bit about SumUp with you, Elliot, and about how we run the company internally and the challenges that are, especially with the scale of SumUp, and how we balance exactly that autonomy with the scale that we have. To introduce myself a little bit, I work in one of the tribes that we have, in one of the products in the Invoices tribe and product. And I collaborate quite often with Jan.
Yeah, I'm Jan. I'm, as Ariane described, in a neighboring tribe. So I'm looking after engineering in the post-light tribe. So what we try to build is a point of sale system for merchants to run their business, to manage it and to grow it. And yeah, there's a lot of challenges around balancing autonomy and centralization in our work. So more than happy to tell more about it.
Great. For our listeners that might not know SumUp, and I'm sure a lot of them will, by the way, it's a really well-established business with a great engineering presence. But it'd be good to understand who are SumUp. So sum up for us.
That's probably not the first time that it was done, but that's a good one.
Yeah, I bet.
The way that probably most people have been familiar with us is because they have interacted with one of our card readers. So they have probably seen the logo while they were paying to one, maybe a coffee shop seller, or maybe some clothing, some retail store or something like that. So that's our biggest product, and that's also how SumUp started on the card reader business, on the card reader area. And that was a bit longer than 10 years ago. And since then, the company has also evolved and grown into a multi-product offering. So we started by offering card reader transactions to merchants, and now you can find products like online invoicing, accounting, so a variety of other tools that you might need to run your business on the SaaS area too.
Got you. Okay. One thing that we're going to be talking about today is a SumUp growing as an organization to multi-thousands of people, and tribalization is something that I see more and more now in engineering, and it's obviously something or values that you embody. So do you want to talk to us a little bit about that journey and how that's evolved during your time at SumUp and why?
Yeah, certainly. Speaking of numbers, currently SumUp consists of approximately 3,400 people. So it's quite a big company, I would say. We're also globally distributed geographically. We have colleagues in the US, in let's say Denmark, in Ukraine, in Germany, in Brazil. So it's really a big company. And when you grow to such an amount of people and also such a number of engineering teams, you realize that you need more structure. But the more you introduce some structure inside of a company, then also grows the number of the dependencies that you have between them. And that can make you slow. That's what typically companies experience while they are growing, that becoming more structured and bigger increases the amount of communication that you need internally, collaboration, alignments, and so on. And so this tribe model that was originally promoted by Spotify is something that we also embrace. And the idea behind is to have individual autonomous units that can work with as little dependencies as possible and autonomously as possible, in order to remain the speed of a startup when developing products, for example. And yeah, this is how we started with the tribe structure. And what we saw over time is also that this also evolves, right? So you have to change that a lot. For example, when I joined in January 2022, we had one, I would say it was even called Tribe of Tribes. It was called the Merchant Growth Tribe. That was really big. And later on, we split that into different areas. So one is what Adrian is running engineering for, is the invoices. Another one that we split out as a separate individual unit is the online store. And the third one is what I'm looking after is the POS, point of sale light tribe. And yeah, so you have this kind of mitosis if a tribe gets too big, and you can split it into then autonomous units. But there's also other ways.
Exactly, because that is one direction that tribes can be created, and it's like by,
Yeah.
let's say, growing until they are large enough to become a unit by themselves, and then they have enough entity to sustain themselves. And another one is also in the opposite direction, especially on the current times, looking more into optimization with capital being way more expensive, and the phase of growth at all costs is gone. Now it's way more about sustainable growth. In some cases, we might also be looking at efficiency, and there might be functions that if you are only, you are tribalizing everything, you're going to have duplication of functions. You can think of course, product, but you're also going to have marketing. You're going to have branding, so performance marketing. You're also going to have HR, finance, and then there is also the phase that we also go sometimes, that is merging tribes. So tribes that are doing the same kind of work but in two different areas, we might merge them for the sake of efficiency and giving more muscle power, giving more power to the tribe. And then that also leads to creations like, for example, we are creating now the go-to-market tribe that is going to focus way more on the go-to-market strategy and our sales strategy also for markets. And that's something that across products and across tribes you can do, but it requires too much alignment. And that's the balance that we are all the time looking. How much reliance, how much alignment you need to do with people, with teams, with units that are external to you. When it becomes too much, maybe it's time to also reconsider and create a centralized
I've
unit.
got a few questions rumbling around. That was actually going to be one of my main questions. Where are your measurements here of where the dependencies lie and how you manage those?
I mean, there's, I think, multiple answers to that, because also I'm not sure we were clear enough about this. What also is one of the aims of a tribe is also to combine all the needed functions together. It's not talking only about engineering, for example, but also having like marketing inside as you need it and so on.
Yeah.
What was a measure, I would say, when we did this mitosis is really when you have different products that become mature enough that it makes sense to manage them also independently as products, then it's time to split them, trying to, again, minimize the dependencies that are created because you're then part of something different. But this is something that we encountered there. And also, like, there is like, if you know about the concept of Dunbar's number, it's like you can have relationships to like slightly not direct degree of up to 100, I think 50 people it is. Mm-hmm. And so just also if you have these numbers of people in the tribe and it continues to grow, then you also know this will not really work super smooth in the future. So there's a good opportunity to split this, but then you have to really see that you find the right product slicing so that you really minimize dependencies that create.
I got you.
Because in a way, tribes should be like independent companies, like that they have their purpose, their mission, their profit and loss statement, and so on. But if at some point you are spending more time aligning, and coordinating your budgets, your scheduling, your planning, than actually doing the work, then it's the moment that we go back to the drawing board. We take a high-level view, and it's like, would it make sense that instead of aligning, we just give ownership to this specific group of people that are working across different companies, and we just make them own that part of the business?
Got you. Okay. What do you think are some of the main challenges of building, let's call it a tribe culture within an organization?
I would think like one of the challenges that you have is that there are some functions that need to be provided to the tribes that somebody has to do it. Let's say that it's like a non-customer facing function, more platform-ish teams. And this is one of the challenges that we might face, because it might not be specifically coupled to the needs of one specific tribe, but it would be, imagine things like reporting. You are not going to be doing reporting on each one of your own tribes, because that's going to be very inefficient. You're going to be reinventing the wheel too many times. But you need to have somebody that is going to be doing that and is offering that to the rest of the teams. This is one of the challenges, one of the frictions, or one of the balances that we need to navigate to. And it's like, where do we put that responsibility? Who is going to be owning and defining the ownership also of shared components? Things like infrastructure and security and things like that. That is a very interesting, fine balance that needs to be navigated.
Yeah. Well, one challenge that I can foresee, and I know it's something that we'll be talking about today, is I'd be really keen to understand how infrastructure, security, but overall technology works in a tribe culture, at tribe level, but also a global scale. You're a global business, what we've just spoken about, and, where you have engineering teams based in the US, Ukraine, Germany, Denmark. So it'd be really good to understand high level how technology works at that level at SumUp.
In a big way, this is kind of extracted or projected from the tribalization. So tribes have quite a high degree of autonomy, and this can go up to the level of choosing what technologies tribes are working on. For example, the technology that my tribe is working on and the languages and frameworks that Jan's tribe are using are different. So ours is more JavaScript ecosystem, and Jan is more onto the Java, JVM ecosystem. So there is quite a degree of independence there. But on the other side, it would be also, again, inefficient if everyone is choosing very weird arcane languages and everything. So again, it's a balance between freedom and also centralization. Like choosing, this is the single language that everyone is going to have to use from now on, to now we are maintaining 100 stacks. So that's that we navigate in that gray line of, let's choose the 3, 4, 5 like reduced set of technologies that are going to support and get really good at, use them in different areas when they make sense, and let also the tribes choose whatever makes more sense for their specific cases. I think a good case is also like how this also shapes the domain of some teams, the area that they are working on, and some teams become also providers of services to the rest of the company. For example, some of the functions that we consume from invoices, they are provided by Jan's team. That initially was not meant to be like a platform, let's say, or consumed, but that's also something that it would be a waste if we go and reinvent the wheel. Let's better make sure that we integrate with what the other tribe is doing. We shape the API together, we shape the SLAs, we shape the SLOs, so we make something better together instead of building it into places. But nobody would force us if we, from our own tribe, we want to also, duplicate that effort and build it in parallel. That's a balance that as teams we can navigate freely and choose whatever is best for both on the engineering side, with not reinventing ourselves and so on, but also especially what is the best for business.
Yeah, and to maybe illustrate the example that you just brought up, if you know the book Team Topologies, that's a book that defines a little bit what kind of engineering teams you can have. And 2 examples described there are the streamlined teams, that are teams that are working independent end-to-end on something that also reaches the end customer. And then there's another type of like platform teams that enable something that is consumed by other teams. And the example that Adrian was hinting at was one of the teams in my tribe is responsible for the product catalog. So if a merchant runs their business, they also want to define what are they selling, croissants, coffee, whatever, and they put it into a catalog. And that is, of course, important for the point of sale, but it's also important, for example, for Adrian's team, for creating invoices. The tribe that I mentioned that provides an online store that our merchants can also use for free also needs to build on some data, and this also comes from the same. And so this is where a team is part of one tribe, but it has a platform team nature. And so its services are used by many other tribes. And then this autonomy also certainly has some borders, and you need to take this into account that you're delivering services for multiple different internal customers and not only for one defined real customer. But what I found even more important, because it's always the product view, when we look at a pure engineering view, when I came here, I was a little bit surprised because incident management is also an interesting topic. And when I came here, all the tribes did it by themselves. Like each tribe had their process how to manage incidents. And that makes no sense really, because of course, if you have some symptoms somewhere, typically the root cause can be somewhere else. And this is an initiative that Adrian led, and maybe we can talk a little bit more about this.
To make it even a bit more maybe interesting, it's also like, of course, an incident is not only from an engineering point of view. You're also we're a financial company, so we are financially regulated in some markets. So in some cases, we also need to involve colleagues from global risk and compliance, and definitely from operations, from our customer support teams, because, well, it's going to happen. If a system is down, we will feel it on our metrics, dashboard, etc. But customer support will feel it because there is an increased number of chat requests, mails, and calls. The particularity, or what had happened, is that because of the, let's say, tolerance of SumUp of letting you do things the way that you prefer, there was not any specific way that was enforced all across the company. So what we did was take a look to what was already being done by teams. What were the success cases? How were the teams that were managing very well and they were collaborating very well with operations, with risk and compliance? What were they already doing, and try to make that kind of our rule, our way of managing incidents. So basically, we extracted that in a natural way, let's say, from what was already done. Because what also feels very artificial to SumUp is come with applying a structure and trying to retrofit it into what already exists.
That's what I was picking up, because you explaining the tribe culture, it seems as if you've got a number of independent and autonomous technology businesses, in essence, interacting with one another. But what it feels is there are rules still, engineering rules, let's say, across the business that ensure that operational excellence, incident management, they don't actually stop at the borders of those tribes, that there's a paradigm that sits across the business of this is how we do things across incident management and operational excellence. This has to be ensured. But above that, you're independent and autonomous to use your own technology stacks and various other things that we've spoken about. That was actually going to be one of my points. How do you ensure that as engineering leaders and continue to grow that?
Yeah, I think what Adrian wanted to say also before is that we do not typically take decisions simply top down and say, this is the new rule and you have to obey it. That's not how it works, because autonomy is really like rather the opposite, right? Everything hierarchical is not very much appreciated there. So how we typically do that is we have a process for decision making that's called co-creation. So anyone who wants to drive a topic, like Adrian, for example, did with the incident management, can gather a small group of people, come up with some standards, then extend the reach, get feedback from others, and so on. And so the kind of consensus expands into the organization. I think you can put it a little bit like this. We even have a term for that. We call it centers of gravity. Like we have it for like what programming languages do we want to use. We have it for the engineering management. Something that I'm involved in is also like, how can we create consistent modeling of same business entities, let's say, in our APIs. So there's also a lot of external integrations of third-party integrators with our various products. And of course, if you want to approach us, you do not want to have to model, I don't know, what a merchant is every time different, or what a sale is every time different. Also, it's not very professional on the outside, right? And so we came up with creating initiatives to standardize that, and all the people that are willing to contribute, they can get together, form like a consensus, and then discuss in broader rounds and broadcast to the company so that it can be leveraged. It's sometimes also a little bit tedious work to do, but in the end, the acceptance is good and much better, and everyone who wants to be involved and has a strong opinion and experience can bring their own experience and expertise to the table, which I think makes a big difference in really the acceptance.
The tedious part is also because there are multiple points where people can dissent, and there are multiple occasions for people to disagree in a constructive way and say, like, what if. So something that for you, for us, it might be obvious, and it's like, it's clear that we're going to end choosing this. Yes, but you still need to go through the phases of co-creating it, making it solid, listening and hearing to the concerns that there might be, incorporating them potentially to the solution that you're proposing. So the result ends usually being stronger. And as this is not coming out of the blue, it's something that people usually they have already been doing it. The moment that you have defined a standard, it's just putting it, black and white on paper, and then it's making it clear, making it explicit, because it's something that people implicitly have already accepted because they had so many chances to dissent and go do their own thing.
Yeah, co-creation is quite powerful, especially in engineering. Where do you think some of the challenges come with tribe or tribe structures?
I think, well, in general, alignment. When you have tribes because there are different priorities, different objectives. So something that it's complicated, it's challenging, but also very interesting is aligning on what goals we are going to be setting and at which pace. Because, for example, my tribe is very small. I'm not going to be able to adjust the roadmap of a platform team or post light tribe that Jan is doing, because they are working on bigger entities. In a way, we need to go and fit to the roadmap of the banking tribe that is way bigger than us. So it's navigating the right timing for the initiatives, but on the other side also influence the roadmap of the other tribes, because if there is something that is really going to be beneficial for you, also going and finding other teams that are also going to benefit from that initiative. For example, it might be improvements on performance on a shared database. It might be improving our incident management and starting to adopt it. You need to, in a way, go and convince people to start going and do these things. Whereas if it would be, top down, hierarchical, it would be way easier. This is what we're going to do. This is the quarter of doing X, and X is going to be done or else. But it's not like that, because people can opt out and be like, yes, this is a great initiative, but it doesn't make sense for me right now. Okay, then you will need to come back next quarter and also talk about that again. So managing the pace at which change is implemented, that's something that it's interesting. Sometimes it might take longer, but we try to optimize for whatever makes more sense for that specific business unit that the tribe should be.
Also, from a company perspective, is that also Adrian explained earlier on that we turned from a mainly one single product company, like the card reader company, to a multi-product company. We have tons of offerings today that help merchants run and thrive with their business. And if you have that and you want to be really innovative and provide value for your customers, this often goes along with, you cannot do this in isolation, right? Of course, every tribe can optimize their own products a little bit, make this a little bit better. But true innovation also can come from combining these products. One example is that we also, so normally SumUp is in a very startup-friendly business model. So if you are a merchant, you can simply buy our hardware, which is also typically at very competitive prices, and you do not have to have any contracts or anything. You can just start accepting card payments through our devices, and you pay a transaction fee then. But there are also bigger merchants who have different requirements. For example, they have very high volume transactions, and for them we also have new product offerings like a subscription model. We call it SumUp One. And that comprises of a lot of different aspects, right? You can get further card readers or our point of sale hardware discounted. You can get cheaper transactions. You can get more withdrawals from your business account. You can get free invoices, which you normally have to pay additional fees for. And if you want to create such product innovation, then you need to have these tribes that contribute to that involved. And so I think it's a strategic challenge to have that alignment that we talked about facilitated across the tribes that are used to be so autonomous. But only through that you can really make biggest impact for customers. And what I think SumUp is doing particularly well is we have a great strategy process. So we have a very clear breakdown from like our strategic vision, which is a world where everyone can build a thriving business. And then we break it down over several steps. So there's one step below that vision that we call big, hairy, audacious goals. To name one example is world's merchants rely on SumUp beyond card payment. So the invoices are an example for that. Online store, also the point of sale solution. So that's the goal. But then we also go below. So we have like success factors. There are two types, like confirmed success factors and potential success factors. Like a confirmed success factor is going up market. For example, a lot of cab drivers, for example, use SumUp devices to accept card payment. But also bigger merchants like a coffee shop, for example, are very interesting. And especially also if we are successful with our vision that people can build a thriving business, it will grow, right? And then you need more functionality and so on. And therefore, to support this vision, also this confirmed success factor of going up market makes a lot of sense. There's also the potential success factors. This is like assumptions that we have that need to be confirmed and could turn into a confirmed success factor. And this is this. And from there's even another step. So there's necessary conditions to reach these success factors. For example, for going up market, we have the necessary condition to provide what a merchant needs to run their daily business. This is really beyond just card acceptance, right? Yep. And so we can really break it down. And just below that, then come the OKRs. And this is very helpful because it really helps you understand how does the thing that my team delivers, for example, contribute to the big picture up to our strategic vision. And this clarity is really impressive to me, I would say. And that helps also a lot with alignment. Not saying that we are perfect, for sure. Yep. But it really helps a lot to make sure what is the strategy in such a multi-product, complex company that we are. Because it really makes it tangible and traceable up to our top-level vision.
That's where I've seen a lot of B2C businesses, product-based businesses be extremely successful. Clarity from direction of the business to really understand what are we building, how do we provide value to our customers. So seeing that in its truest form from you guys, and even start, and I guess that vision or that strategic vision comes from the top, but it helps with co-creation at the bottom, which, is obviously what we're talking about right now. So having those really clear steps is pretty key. And you touch on something I think that's really interesting, as in cross-tribe collaboration can help create innovation. You've been able to build a multi-product company. The question that I want to ask is, talk to us a little bit about managing dependencies and where the challenges are around that.
Managing dependencies, usually it's embedded on the whole cycle that Jan was explaining. So it depends how deep. So this whole strategic prioritization that we have comes from very long-term goals. Like, for example, our vision as a company has not changed in 10 years. We keep on adjusting some of the confirmed success factors, so they might start as a potential, then we transform it into a confirm if we know that has worked to be successful. We try different things and so on, but the vision stands for, let's say, forever and ever since the company was founded.
Of course.
Now, where we might have more conversations is about the sequencing. So I think on the dependencies, it's not so difficult to manage. It's about the sequencing, and it's like, is this a problem we need to manage now? Or is this a problem that we might postpone until, let's say, our scale has grown, or until this other product has become big enough, and so on. So I think the conversations that we have are a lot about timing, and it's like, when is the right time to accomplish one of the, let's say, big projects that we know that we're going to have to do to be able to keep on growing, or to keep on offering products, or to enable more innovation across the company.
The challenge about alignment is always when there's conflict about prioritization, capacity, something like that, right? This is the main point where you need alignment, and where it's crucial. And I think also with that, the clarity that is given by the strategy that is so rigidly broken down helps a lot. There was one example in the past where there was also one team that Ariane was responsible for, which we decided needed to be discontinued. And then the question was, where do the colleagues go? Where can they help? And so on. And because we had needs on several places. And that really helped also make it clear, hey, you can go there and do that if you like. Or also what Adrian supported very nicely is making it clear, hey, strategic importance is, for example, there. And some of the colleagues then joined also the point of sale light tribe because of that. And this is, I think this is the most important contribution, because alignment is needed in conflict cases. And then it's very beneficial to have like strategic guidance on what is important and what should you focus on. And that can really then facilitate with the decision making and managing also dependencies or whatever. We have similar cases, as I mentioned, with this platform team that owns the product catalog in our end, because there's of chaos, a lot of demand from several stakeholders, like the online store or invoices or like post-light users. It needs to be done, and then this helps with the alignment.
And to also like make it maybe more like to illustrate a bit this specific moment that there was a conflict, the way that we try to navigate it is like, when you're leading people at SumUp, you have more context, and our responsibility, what we can do for them, is to share some of this context to still let people take decisions and to make them happy, because one of our success factors that is confirmed is to be people positive. We're a people positive organization. For that, you need to offer a place where people can grow, they are satisfied, they like what they're doing, etc. But what happens if these people are working in a product and we see it, because we have more context, that is not a priority, and I'm going to air quote, they are at risk. So then is when we try to guide them towards initiatives, towards areas that where they can contribute, their skill set is valued, they are ready to contribute, and they are going to have a higher impact just by doing something that they are good at. So that's where we use our, let's say, organizational structure to guide them to something that is going to make them happier, and it's going to be more effective for SumUp also.
That's an interesting point. You talk about effectivity, and obviously theme of today is centered around autonomy, centralization, and we've obviously had a heavy onus on engineering. But talk to us about other areas in the business where you feel autonomy and centralization is really important.
I can come up with one example that is also, I mentioned the tribes are cross-functional, right? So they are really intended to be self-contained organizations within the organization. One example of that is HR. So what we have, for example, is we have business partners, or we call it people partners, in the tribes. They are part of the tribe. That comes with a lot of benefits. For example, they really understand much deeper what are the needs of the tribe when it comes to, for example, recruiting. They are much closer also to the people that are there in order to also create a people positive environment. And they are much more active also in shaping the culture than in organizations that I've seen where, for example, HR is a central organization that is kind of a service provider for other units. That is definitely a benefit of this autonomy and decentralization. Of course, there's also some challenges around that, right? So it's harder to have some professional development paths for people in HR because there are naturally less people. And you also need to have central things, because also the examples that we had before, like people can also choose to work somewhere else on other impactful stuff, also requires that you have this internal mobility. This only works if you have a consistent career model, development framework, you hire for similar standards, and so on. So also here it's critical to find the right balance between the autonomy and focusing on local optimizations versus also having overarching efficiencies that make it easier than also in the grand scheme of things for people to move within the company, to grow professionally, to stay longer, to have a also happier work life, so to say. And yeah, it's also a balance to find, and we're always optimizing, but is a good example, I think.
And maybe what you can also see is that, so in some of these cases where you have functions that are tribalized, like people partners, and they are embedded into a tribe, a way that people might grow professionally, it's also, let's say, tangentially. And it's like by helping tribes that are not big enough to have these functions yet, but in a, let's say, part-time way, these specific individuals or teams can also give service. So they are still embedded, maybe a little bit less embedded than if they were fully tribalized, but still it's not something centralized that you need to ask for a ticket and you need to, it's not fully decoupled. Maybe they are a little bit less present on the day-to-day, but that's also a way that smaller tribes can also benefit from this. Also, because depending on the phase where a tribe is on, they might have more constant needs. Let's say because they are creating more processes, they are getting really big, they need to scale, etc. So then you might need, let's say, more supervision or more help. And there are tribes that are in an earlier stage because we also, let's say, incubate initiatives. And then in these phases, you have way more experimentation, creativity. You don't need so much supervision, more as, advice and guidance, but you don't need so much control on in this time. So then it's also something that, in a way, these functions can also do part-time from, and this can be also, so we have spoken about HR, it can also be marketing, it can also be our finance partners. So we also have like our accountants, they are also quite embedded into the product. So in a way, they are like the micro CFO of the tribe that you are in. And depending on how big you are, at some point you might externalize that because it's like, okay, this is already very procedural.
Yeah, that's what I feel is one of the key benefits to a tribe culture or tribe structure, if you like. Really understanding your product domain or your domain itself, whichever part of the business you're in, whether it's HR, marketing, engineering. But I think really embedding yourself in that and understanding it seems pretty key. I'm making a wild assumption here that you've both worked in a tribe structure before and a non-tribe structure. If you were to go into other businesses, how do you think you might influence that idea to build a tribe structure?
That's a sneaky question.
Yeah.
I think one key takeaway from me personally is really to be clear about where are the benefits bigger of what you described, being very close to the specific domain and product of the tribe, and where are the gains bigger in having something defined, standardized across the company. And I think the important part is really finding the right balance. So the balance also between autonomy and setting, like creating an environment with some guardrails, so to say. That's for me the key point that you really have to critically reflect on and always try to rebalance for the optimal outcome.
Yeah, I think there is not one size fits all with any organizational structure. So I think it needs to be something that feels organic, that you extract with how people are working. So I think naturally a way that tribes work very well is when you have different parallel threads, like different business units that you have a common goal, but you can optimize in different areas and they don't necessarily hurt each other. But when you are, let's say, if it's in a smaller company and you have a single product that is doing a single thing, maybe it is not beneficial to have this decoupling and autonomy and conversation and discussion. Maybe you are just optimizing for too early on. Like, I think the whole tribalization came also at SumUp as a result. Like, SumUp is older than 10 years old, and it has not been running with tribes the whole time. It was also a continuous learning process reflecting on how teams were interacting with each other, where were the pain points, the bottlenecks that people were experiencing, and what I was not part of that decision when it was taken, but what I understand is that it was hurting innovation. Like, this was one of the reasons why it was more pushed into tribalization, and it was implanted to give more autonomy, to let more parallel threads grow. And well, the result is that right now SumUp is a multi-product company, and then you have successful initiatives like banking, point of sale, loyalty in the US. And it would have been very difficult to do that with a single focus point, but it also needed a specific scale. I think doing that since the beginning could have been probably pushing in too many directions at once. Then you don't make any progress. You need to have a specific muscle. We are more than 3,000 people, so working with a single goal is, some people are going to be idle. When you start to slice down, you can have way more.
Both really good explanations to that, and obviously we hadn't touched on it, pre-podcast, but it's something that I was thinking about throughout our chat, and you're both supremely positive around the benefits of it, and it's just understanding how you might take those into another business. But it was good to understand, and both of you have very kindly wanted to come to this and share some recommendations on books and how people can actually learn from some of these ideas. So that's very kind. Kick us off with some of your recommendations and for why as well.
I think, like many of the things that we have been talking about, the big, hairy, audacious goals, the confirmed success factors, it doesn't come from scratch. So we are also quite open about that at SumUp. We have not reinvented the wheel. So we have read and tried different things and so on, tried what works, what doesn't work, and then we have applied what kind of felt good for the organization. And I think a book I would recommend on this area and help me quite a lot understand some of the decisions and direction that the company has navigated was Beyond Entrepreneurship 2.0 by Jim Collins. So he has like a whole series of books, Built to Last and so on. They are really good, I think, on the sense of the scale of what SumUp aspires to build is very long term. So whatever we are explaining to you right now and you're listening is a snapshot, a capture of what we are doing right now, but there is a whole reflection of constantly refining, like going for that long-term goal with fine-graining it into smaller parts. And BE 2.0 was a really interesting book for me to read on this.
Yeah, I have a recommendation that is on a totally different level, but I think it's a highly undervalued book. It's How to Have a Good Day by Carolyn Webb. The book brings a very good mixture of behavioral science insights, very practically applicable in daily life, as any professional in professional work, and even in personal life. I think, for example, explaining how to manage your time effectively, how to say no in a, let's say, polite and convincing way. I really love that because it makes my daily life easier, and I think many people could benefit from that.
I love that in both different ways, and of course we've mentioned team topologies as well. Yeah. I'm going to put some of those references in the description below. We always finish a podcast with where the business is hiring and for what roles, and what that actually might look like, because we've got 4,500 listeners that tune in on various different channels and are really interested in what other companies are building. So do you want to share with us what you're hiring for, where, if that's locational, and maybe some insights into an interview process, typical interview process?
So we are looking for multiple roles currently. One I would like to emphasize is a senior QA automation engineer, because product quality is also of utmost importance. And while we believe that the accountability for the product quality needs to stay with the engineering teams. We also have to acknowledge that if you want to do functional testing, non-functional testing, end-to-end automated across the channels, we have apps for iOS, for Android. We have our own Android flavor for our own hardware. If you want to do that, we are on the web with some front ends. Then you need to have special knowledge and expertise. And this needs to be brought to the tribe and also to the teams to empower them to own quality themselves. We're also looking for several backend engineers on the Kotlin JVM realm. And to answer the question about how the interview process looks like, so there's typically a first screening call with our recruiter, who is an embedded person in the tribe, so she can already explain very well what is it that we are, for example, doing, what are the challenges, why we're building a point of sale system, what are we looking for. Then the next step is an interview with the hiring manager, so the potential future manager for that role. And then for the technical roles, we typically have either a take-home task or a live coding, depending on what the candidates feel comfortable about. And if this is passed, then we go through what is very important, I think, also for the candidates, a team interview. So for the team to understand whether the person would fit, but also for the candidate to understand, is that the colleagues I want to work with, they will be my daily contact points. So I think it's super important, and also a mixture of roles, and maybe product managers, designers, and so on. And lastly, what we also consider very important, we have a bar raiser interview that is interviewing for, do the values of the candidates match with what we value here in the company. So that's the last stage, and then we're done.
And maybe to also connect with what we were explaining earlier, this last interview, the bar raiser, is also something that we usually do across tribes, because as any tribe can design the hiring process as they want with their TAs, the recruiters embedded into their tribe, this last step is usually done by somebody that is not in that specific tribe, just to ensure that this person is also exposed and speaks with somebody from outside of the tribe, just to make sure that we are hiring great colleagues everywhere.
Good. And locationally, whereabouts are you hiring these engineers?
So we are also flexible. So we have a lot of the people here in Berlin, and that's also very nice if you live in Berlin. But we also have colleagues, as I said earlier, in Denmark, like also where Adrian normally is located, in Poland, in the Ukraine, so in these regions. But we're also open to other locations. It must be, of course, compatible time zone wise.
And maybe also something to add is, like, if you have listening to us for now so long talking about tribes and the decentralization and everything, go and check the career site of SumUp, because what we are telling you is our point of view, our snapshot of SumUp, but we also have for sure openings in LATAM, in Brazil, in Chile, in Santiago de Chile, in London. So in the other tribes that we also collaborate with, but we are not part of, for sure they are also hiring. And whatever we have been telling you about this, in the other tribes, they will have a very similar but a slightly different point of view. So definitely chat with them, apply if you feel interested, and have a chat with them.
Great. It's been awesome to sit with you both and learn about SumUp's growth. It's been great to hear about the tribe structures and the positivity that it brings, the innovation that it brings, what you're actually doing with the business, the co-creation and the strategic vision. I absolutely love. It's something that I'd love to bring to Enginears, Artifact. So thank you for sharing that. And we must do another podcast at some point in the next 12 months to see where you've both evolved to, where the business has evolved to. And it's a pleasure having both of your time to sit and chat about some of this stuff today. And as always, for anyone listening, share with colleagues, share with engineering leaders who maybe have this structure in place or are thinking about this structure in place, because there's no doubt that there's huge learnings here. Jan and Adrian, a massive thanks to you both.
Thanks a lot for having us. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Elliot. I hope that it was interesting.
It was an absolute pleasure. And please go and like, share, subscribe, and all of that good stuff. And bye for now. Hey guys, thanks for watching this episode. Massively appreciate you listening and checking in with us. If you want to find out more about us and what we're doing, please check us out on social media. What we're trying to do at Enginears is build a community to drive knowledge sharing and experiences. On Twitter, we can be found Enginears.io. It's no_. We've also got a website, which is enginears.io. These links will all be posted in the description. Any feedback and comments are massively appreciated. We're always looking to improve on where we can. Thanks, guys.